Here we go.
Welcome everybody. Greg Peterson coming to you from the urban farm in the heart of Phoenix, Arizona. Tonight, we are going to talk about what you need to know before you buy your fruit trees. There's this whole class, really this whole program came out of me discovering that you can go into most nurseries in every big box store and they will sell you a fruit tree that will never make fruit. And in my humble opinion, that is just bogus. So that's why I put together this particular content. So let's jump in. Maybe we'll jump in. Let's see. There we go. This is me in 1975 when I planted my first fruit tree. Yes, I had braces and glasses and was really interested for whatever reason in growing food at the age of 14 or 15. I still to this day do not know where that came from. My favorite thing to grow is a fruit tree because you plant it once and you get food for decades and decades and decades. In fact, I have a couple of orange trees in my backyard that were planted in the 1920s. So they're coming up on 100 years old. Let's call them 90 plus years old at this point. So there you go. Why grow fruit trees? My favorite thing to grow, like I said, is because you plant it and harvest it forever. There is no lack in nature. About 10 years ago, I discovered this whole notion of lack on the planet only lives in one place, right in here. Because there is so much abundance in my garden. It is amazing the amount of abundance that grows off of one tree. That apple tree lived, and so in the desert, if we get 25 years out of an apple, a peach, an apricot, or a plum, you're doing really good. The heat is harder on them than they are for citrus. That particular apple tree used to give me about 300 pounds a year of apples for 20 years. That would be 6,000 pounds of apples that I got off of that tree. There's no lack there. The next thing, why grow a fruit tree, is have you ever tried a pulled off of the tree peach? Once you do, you'll never be able to go back. I can't eat peaches, apricots, plums from the grocery store because they're just yucky. All right. What is the true cost of a tree? So I am a great big fan of experimenting as long as you know you're experimenting. And often when you go into a big box store or some of the local nurseries and you buy a tree, you're just trusting them. This is what this class is all about tonight. It's about those caveats, those things that you need to know in order to make sure that you don't fall into the trap. So experimenting, there's a cost to experimenting. There's a cost of the tree, cost of the water, cost of the fertilizer, cost of the time, because it takes 3 years to get fruit, at least. So if you're 3 years into a tree before you ever know if it's going to produce. I had one here at the urban farm that I bought at Price Club in 1990, and we brought it home and planted it. It was a peach, and it never once made a peach. That's how I learned that lesson. You're going to learn about that here in a minute. And then there's the hope. The cost of hope. So experimenting is good if you know you're experimenting, and go with what works. If you just want a peach tree or an apple tree, or just want a tree that's gonna work, if we tell you what to do, pick it off of our list, because I've grown these. They produce fruit for me. I've experimented. I've deciphered. I personally, over the past 30 years, have done the work for you. That's why we do this program the way that we do it. All right, so let's jump in. There's 3 things that you need to know to make sure that you get past the, oh my gosh, that tree's never going to make fruit problem. First thing is rootstocks. Rootstocks are grafted to fruiting stock. So fruiting stock is called scion, like the car, but the scion was there first. And basically what they do is they take a fruit tree that they know exactly what it is, like a Fuji apple or an Anna apple or a desert gold peach. They know exactly how it grows, how much it's going to produce. And they take cuttings off of that and they put it on a rootstock. Now, here's the big caveat around rootstocks is if you go into a big box store, they've probably ordered 25 copies of a particular tree all on the same rootstock. That rootstock likely won't do very well here. So we need to get Arizona specific, low desert specific rootstocks in order to make these trees work. And you know, we all have smartphones these days. We all have smartphones. So, you know, if you're standing in a nursery or you're standing at a big box store and there's a fruit tree there, first of all, you need to know what the fruit is to make sure that it's the right fruit. We're going to talk about that here in a minute. Secondly, you need to know the rootstock. If you're standing there looking at that tree and there isn't a rootstock tag on the tree, don't buy it. Don't buy it, because it's likely not the kind of a rootstock that's going to do well here in the low desert. So rootstocks are very important. Once again, rootstocks are grafted to fruiting stock. And that way, the consistency of what you get fruit-wise off of that tree is always going to be the same. That's thing number one, rootstocks. Thing number two, chill hours. We get about, I used to say 350 hours of chill. We get about 300 hours of chill now, I'm going to guess, because it's gotten warmer here. And so I was, a few years ago, I was at a Walmart, and rarely do I go into a Walmart, but I walked into this place, and I always walk through the garden center whenever I go into those places and see what they have. They had some peach trees at this particular Walmart. And the tag on the peach tree, they had a tag on the peach tree. The tag on the peach tree said peach. That was it. Do you realize that there are literally thousands of varieties of peaches out there that they could choose from? And there's about 10 varieties that'll do really well here in the low desert. So second thing I want you to do when you walk up to that tree in a nursery or somewhere, you need to look at the rootstock tag. If there's not a rootstock tag, walk away. Then you need to look at the fruit stock tag or the scion tag and see what it says. It should tell you things like how many chill hours, things like what does this thing taste like? What kind of fertilizer to use on it. It should give you data to take care of this tree. One of the big pieces is chill hours. If you are sitting there looking at a tag on a tree and it says 400, 500, 600, 800 hours of chill, it's never going to make fruit. And I was recently at a Home Depot last spring, and there were apples that required 600 hours of chill. Just saying. So chill hours are very important. You need to purchase trees that require less than, well, 350 for sure, but probably less than 300 hours of chill. And everything that we bring in is low chill. This is one I discovered myself. And this is, when does the soft flesh fruit ripen? So soft flesh fruit is apples, peaches, apricots, plums, grapes, berries, mulberries, figs. Well, not so much figs because they can go through the summer, but those soft flesh fruits. When do they ripen? What I have discovered over the course of the last 30 years of growing fruit trees is that if we try and get a soft flesh fruit that ripens after about July 4th or 5th, they have a tendency to cook on the tree. The fruit is smaller. They just don't do as well. So all of our varieties of fruit trees ripen before July 4th or 5th. That just makes it so much easier to grow fruit. Now, here's the other thing. You can get some low chill apple trees, and they can make fruit. But the problem with them is that they ripen in the fall. And here's what I noticed about that. I had an Asian pear growing in my front yard, and Asian pears, man, if they ripened early, I think they would do great. but all the pears ripen in the fall here in the low desert. And so they have to go through the summer. And my Asian pear in my front yard, it was a beautiful tree. And and I grew out there for about a decade, and it would give me about 5 to 10 fruit a year. That's it. Most of the time they were okay fruit. I think my phone's playing music. It is. Go away. Most of the time they would be okay fruit, but it wasn't anything that was prolific. And are you willing to use a space in your yard for that much fruit? Something you have to decipher. And I really haven't found a pear tree that really thrives here, although we're experimenting with one. So ripening times is real important, and climate appropriate trees, that's kind of in the same ballpark as, you know, I did see a persimmon on my walk this morning. But this poor tree, again, it ripens in the fall, this time of year, but this poor tree was really struggling. And, you know, is that something you want to do to a tree? That's got to be up to you. So far, 3 things: chill hours, rootstocks, and appropriate ripening times. All of our trees qualify for this, just so you know. So we've done the work for you already. Okay, now we're going to jump into urban orcharding. And this is, I want you to know this before you buy your fruit trees, because I want you to know that there is a pruning management process that you need to do in order to make these trees do what we want them to do. And it's called urban orcharding. If you were at our Saturday event a few weeks ago, Tom Spellman talked about urban orcharding, and that we will upload into our member area, so you'll be able to watch that. Urban orcharding is all about keeping your trees small. And these are 2 peach trees that were in a friend of mine's front yard. I planted them there in 1999. And you can see the street sign in the back. That shows you how tall they are. So we successfully kept them at that height. And you'll notice how they branched out in a nice, you know, nice branching pattern. And these 2 trees, they used to make 40 or 50 pounds of peaches every year, which was an amazing amount of peaches, kept small like that. So by keeping the trees small, they're easier to manage, they're easier to pick, and they let you, by keeping them small, you can put more trees in. Therefore, you can put more different kind of trees in. We call it successive ripening. I have a bundle that I put together of a desert gold peach and a Swaze swirl peach and a mid-pride peach. They successively ripen middle of May, beginning of June, end of June, so that you have like a full 2 months worth of peaches coming off of your trees, rather than one tree producing all your peaches in a 10-day period. So that's why we like to keep our trees small. They're easier to manage, they're easier to prune, they're easier to pick, and we can plant different varieties in the same space. And the same size of a standard peach tree, standard size peach tree, which is 25 feet diameter by 25 feet tall, I can put 4 to 6 smaller peach trees, 4 to 6 different varieties, 4 to 6 different ripening times. So some of the ways that we do urban orcharding here at the Urban Farm, and this is a picture of my apple hedge that's in the front yard, and then I have one coming up of my citrus hedge that's coming up in a little while, is putting them in hedgerows. One of the big things I learned about hedgerows is if you want to do a nice hedgerow, and I've got an apple hedgerow, I've got 2 citrus hedgerows, I have 3 citrus hedgerows, and I have a dwarf black mulberry hedgerow, is how close to plant them. If you're going to do a hedgerow and plant them, 5 to 6 foot spacing between the tree trunks is perfect. This particular apple tree, they were 2 feet apart. Way too close. They don't need to do that. It's a waste of money if you try that. 4 to 6 feet is a perfect distance on hedgerows. There's also planting multiple trees in one hole. And this is for people that are really short on space and time. And basically what you do is you do a triangle. That's kind of triangle-like, right? You do a triangle, and at each one of the points of the triangle, you dig a standard hole. It's really not one hole. It's one big gigantic hole. And you plant one tree in each corner of the triangle, pointed out just a little bit like that. So that what eventually happens with having multiple trees in one hole is it grows up to look like one plant when there's really three different trees planted in that space. Multi-grafted trees. These are what they call cocktail trees. I'm not a big fan of cocktail trees. First of all, for the deciduous cocktail trees, often we can't get 2 or 3 different varieties that all ripen here in the low desert. The other thing is, generally speaking, with citrus, if you're not out there managing a multi-trunk or a multi-grafted tree every month, what can happen is they get a lemon, a lime, and an orange on it. If you're not out there managing it, the lemon's going to take the tree over, and within 5 years, you've got a very expensive, because they're usually 2 to 3 times the cost. You've got a very expensive lemon tree there. So that's where the planting multiple trees in one hole comes in at, is planting them like that, and then so each quadrant would be a place where you get a different fruit. So I know there's a Q&A. I'm not seeing it. I know there's a Q&A down there. Please jump in, throw questions at us. We'll take them here in a little while. All right, this is my perfectly pruned peach tree, and I'm going to talk to you for the next little while about how we actually go about pruning these trees. And it may sound severe, but it really works. This tree on the right is the same as the tree on the left. This is a peach tree. The picture on the right is January. Picture on the left is June. They're deciduous. Deciduous means they lose their leaves in the winter. And this tree, when I planted it, you can go back to my YouTube channel. When I very first started my YouTube channel, go way to the end, way to the far end of it. And I cut this off at 8 inches. I cut it off at 8 inches above the graft point, and this is what it turned into. And what I want you to notice, I got this data in 2004. I was in Italy for 3 weeks, and was a friend of mine. I went with a friend of mine, and we wandered around farms and took pictures of trees. She laughed at me at how many tree pictures I took back then. And one of the things that I noticed over and over and over again is that they had big branches and small branches and not a lot in between branches. So if you notice on this peach tree, there's a bunch of small branches and not so many medium-sized branches and a lot of big branches. This tree is pruned to manage the amount of fruit that falls, that shows up on it. Peach trees are notorious if you let the branches get too long, that they break. The branches actually break, and they can destroy the entire tree. So pruning a tree from the get-go is how you get on top of it. And I've got some examples for you here. All right, watch that tree in the circle. This tree was in the ground for a year. This is a December picture because everything's lost their leaves except the one desert gold peach in the middle, and they usually lose their leaves a little later. This is before I pruned it. So it'd been in the ground for a year, and this is before I pruned it. The picture on the left is after I pruned it. It may seem pretty severe for a second year pruning. So the second year is you put it in the ground the first year, and the second year you want to do another significant prune on it. So this picture was taken right after the tree was pruned in January-ish. And 6 months later, this is what that tree did on the right. Actually, I think this one was 2 months later. This was 6 months later. This is what can happen when you're watering and you're planting and you're pruning them correctly. And, you know, that tree did really well. All right, more on the pruning process. This is a before picture, before I pruned it. I wonder if I have, no, darn it, that's the after. I was hoping to get a little pencil or a pen or something. I pruned this off, and you'll actually see on the next picture how far I pruned it off. It's the first nub. So if you go straight up the branch and there's about 3/4 of the way, then it kind of twists off to the right. That's where I pruned it at first. And this picture was taken.
Hey, Greg.
Yeah.
We can see your mouse, so you can use your mouse to show it.
Oh, excellent. All right, farm out. Thanks. Thanks, Miss Janice. All right, so I pruned this tree off about here. So that was about 18 inches, let's call it. All right, so that's this point right here. And what I let it do, you'll notice is that I'm letting it fan out so that it can fan out in multiple different directions. And also remember that there's a bunch of big branches here and a bunch of small and not a lot in between. That holds the tree up. And this is what they looked like when they were fully leafed out. Now, these are 2 desert gold peaches. These peaches were on a western exposure. That means they got full on sun from noon until sundown, and they absolutely cooked. They grew like mad. I couldn't ever believe how quickly these trees grew, but they just flew when they were growing. And they produced an amazing amount of fruit and died in about 10 years just because it was way too hot. So now I have in that space a Pakistani mulberry that's shading that office, because on the tree right there, if you were to walk right through that wall, that's where I'm sitting right now and waving at you from. So it's shading the western face of my office, which is real important. All right, this is the citrus hedge, which, geez, this picture was taken probably 8 years ago. It's now a good 14 feet tall. I let it grow tall. I let it grow tall. All right, now we're going to jump into the fruit that does well here. And citrus, one of the 5 C's of Arizona, is citrus. You know, virtually every kind of citrus that we can get a hold of.
Hey, Greg.
Will do well here. Yeah.
I got a question that works really well on your last slide, since you were just there. If you didn't prune far enough down the trunk at the time of planting, can you fix this in the tree's second year? Question.
Yes, absolutely. So for this picture right here, if you didn't get it pruned far enough down, absolutely, you can. We do a pruning class in December. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that this year. But we do a pruning class in December, and I address that then. So the thing about deciduous trees is they go dormant in the winter. And I actually you'll notice that there's no nectarines on our list. And nectarines don't seem to do really well here because of something called a thrip. So I had a nectarine out in my backyard for about a decade, maybe a decade and a half. And I just let it grow, and it didn't ever make any viable fruit at all. And so one day I went out there, and it was literally thigh size at the base of the trunk. And there were a couple of smaller branches that came out, but I cut it off at 6 feet. This is an experiment. I cut it off at 6 feet, and that gave it a whole new set of life. And all of a sudden, within 3 years, I had something that looked much more like this than a 18-foot tall tree, which is what it had originally grown out when I planted it 15, 20 years ago. So I hope that answered your question. All right, so we're going to jump into the types of fruit that do really well here. I'm not going to jump into specifics on this, but we'll talk about in generals and throw your questions in as well. Citrus do really well here. We have a shortage of citrus because we have one commercial grower in the state, and everybody buys from that commercial grower. So we get what we can get. And, if you participated in our citrus program, we did close it up already. We did bring in a few extras, so, you'll be able to have access to some of that if you missed it. Apples, there's 2 varieties of apples, Anna and Dorset Golden. They're low chill, and they ripen before the end of June, or around the end of June. They're amazing apples. I've only ever known them to be green apples with a little bit of a golden hue on the Dorset Golden, but that's Anna and Dorset Golden. They are really crunchy and tart in May. In June, they get really crunchy and sweet. They're great for baking, for applesauce, for apple cider, both hard cider. I've never made hard cider, or just apple juice. For apple wine, when I was in Croatia a few years ago in June, somebody said, I want some apples. I said, go pick away, because I can't pick them. I was gone, and a year later, I got 6 bottles of the most amazing apple wine. They make great for dehydrating. You know, there's many things you can do with them. They're a couple of incredible apples. Grapes, again, you need early ripening grapes. We bring in Monuka, Flame, and either Princess or Thompson Seedless. Princess and Thompson Seedless are really almost synonymous. One's a hybrid of the other. The thing about grapes in the desert, they take extra care. You're going to have to make sure you foliar feed. You're going to have to make sure that you use BT, Bacillus thuringiensis. Otherwise, the skeletonizers can come in and get a hold of them. And we'll be talking lots about foliar feeding this year, because we just finished our hottest summer in history, and the summer before it wasn't much better. In fact, I was talking to a guy today that told me that apparently saguaros are dropping dead. And you don't want to be near a saguaro when it drops dead, because it could crush a truck. So it's just been brutal here. So all of these plants are going to require more care than what we're used to giving them. So we're amping up our care on that. So three kinds of grapes. Berries, we bring in about 3 or 4 different kinds of berries. They do great on a eastern exposure. That means they get sun in the morning, not in the afternoon. But there's I can't remember the ones that we've got, but they do really well here, especially with afternoon shade. Figs, pomegranates, jujubes. Figs, pomegranates, and jujubes are more desert adaptable. They're more heat tolerant. They're more drought tolerant. So they have a tendency to do a little better here. A loquat is a tropical fruit, kind of like an apricot. The cool thing about the loquat is when they ripen in early March. So then we have a space in there that we have a fruit that's ripening. So stone fruit. We're going to talk about apricots, peaches, and plums. On the next slide, we're going to talk about the stone fruits that aren't listed here. So I'll go over them. But apricots, 2 kinds, Katy and Gold-Kissed. 300 and 350 hours of chill. Both of them do really well here. Really my favorite stone fruit. I talk a lot about the desert gold peach, which is amazing. The apricots are to live for. So 2 kinds of apricots. There's about 10 different kinds of peaches. Desert gold is my favorite. Tropic snow is another one. Swaze swirl is a donut peach that does remarkably well here. Again, ripens early. And then plums, there's a few plums that do really well here. Again, the problem we run into with some of these and some of the hybrids, I had somebody ask me about a pluary or something, a plum cherry, the other day. And there's one particular pluary that does really well here that's on our list. The tag does say 400 hours, but it's been producing here. They're still experimenting on how many chill hours it actually needs. So it's actually producing fruit here. But this other one, they asked me, I think it was last Saturday at our event, or 2 Saturdays ago at our event, what about this particular pluary? And the problem is it ripens in August, and it just cooks on the tree. I'll keep throwing that in. We've got to pay attention to that. Then there's guavas. Guavas actually do surprisingly well here. The guavas, the loquats, some of the other tropicals, we'll bring those in. We usually order them from a grower in San Diego and bring them in early January, and just you'll have to pick them up on the lot. And then there's the mulberries. There's the dwarf black mulberry, which is my new favorite. Here's the thing. The plant isn't the dwarf. The berry is the dwarf. The berry makes about a dime-sized berry. They're very prolific. They produce well from April into June. And I think I have 2 or 3 gallons of them that I picked that we couldn't eat them all, that are still in the freezer. I'm thinking about making mulberry jam from them. And then the Pakistani mulberry, which is an incredible fruit. It makes about a 3-inch long berry. Again, amazing. And then Oscars, if we can find them, a local grower sometimes has Oscars. But so honestly, the mulberries are my 2 favorite berries to grow here. All right, intermediate, date palms, papayas, acerola cherries, other tropicals. They're especially needing extra protection from the heat and the sun. So, if you're interested in these are ones that could work. Other tropicals are bananas and that kind of stuff. But, I don't grow any of these. I have an acerola cherry here that's struggling along. I don't grow any of these because they take so much extra work. I'm a lazy gardener. I want to put something in the ground and have it work. And then the nay fruits are nectarines because of the thrip problem. Almonds, I just have never found an almond tree, and I've tried and tried and tried. I've never found an almond tree that does well here. If somebody can find one that's producing well, that knows what it is, I'd love to know it. Pistachios are high chill, 800 hours of chill. Cherries, I think we've determined after 5 years, 6 years of bringing cherries in that it's a rootstock issue. A cherry tree could do well here. And I'm not going to say well, could do okay here. And after about 3 or 4 years, it dies. So you get a few cups of cherries and game over. So they're good tasting cherries, but the tree just doesn't make it. Dave Wilson Nursery, our grower, is looking at what it will take to fix that. But at this point, no go on the cherries. And we have a pear that I found growing here in Phoenix that we took some cuttings off a couple of years ago. And it seems to be, knock on wood, it seems to be doing well here. We'll see. It is a fall ripening. So, we have to get the tree established. I think we made 16 copies. And for those of you that got a copy of it, we know where you're at, and we need your cuttings, all of your cuttings next year, so we can make more of them. All right. A couple other things to know. Fruiting viability. One of my neighbors went to a nursery recently, 5 years ago recently, and bought a pomegranate. It was a ornamental pomegranate. You need to make sure that whatever plant you're buying is a fruit production tree. Just know that. Another term to know, self-fruitful versus non-self-fruitful. All of our trees except our pluary, I think that's it. All of our trees except our pluary is self-fertile, which means they don't need a cross-pollinator. Non-self-fruitful means that you need a cross-pollinator.
Few of our trees are notated with an S+. And that means that they are self-fruitful. They just do better with a special tree, a complementary tree somewhere nearby. Uh-oh, Greg froze. So yes, if you're looking on our cart and you see an S+ next to the trees, that's what that means.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Welcome back.
All right, cool. And this is with gigabit internet service here at the house. Go figure.
Weird.
All right, so self-fruitful versus non-self-fruitful. There is also male and female trees. This specifically applies to the mulberries. We only bring in female trees, so we only get fruit off of them. My guess on that is that they're that the berry itself is not fertile. Just like we get eggs out of our hens without a rooster, you can get berries off of the tree without a male. We don't want males anyways because of the pollen issue. But so all of our mulberries are female mulberries, and they're propagated out that way. When to plant, we used to suggest February. What we found is that we can get a lot better citrus stock in October. So October it is, and then we give you directions on how to make sure that your tree does well. and deciduous and tropicals in January. We're going to wrap it up in January this year. And then the other thing you need to know for fruit tree success, and we are going to cover this in nauseam and in depth in our planting, watering, fertilizing class, and a little bit in our after you buy your tree class. But what you put in the hole is a 60-40 mix of native soil, 40% native soil, 60% planting mix, azomite, mycorrhiza, and worm castings. And I'm actually working on another additive that will help prevent Texas root rot. We've had a lot of trees die to Texas root rot this summer just because of the heat. So there we go. All right, how our program works. Education first. We give all of our fruit tree classes are free, and we give them starting at the beginning of September, October, and November. They're all going to be online this year, and all be recorded. So there you go. We need you, especially this year, we need you to pre-order your trees. We are running low on our deciduous order. Now, we had to place our deciduous order in March. We do every year. We order them in our deciduous trees in March. So we had to order our deciduous trees in March. And in retrospect, if I'd have known what was coming, I'd have probably added 25 or 50% more, because we are running low on them. So make sure that you get your deciduous orders in soon. And then at the nursery opens in October and January, October for citrus, January for deciduous. And you'll come and get your trees. We give you very explicit directions on how to plant them, how to nurture them. I say this all the time. If you're going to spend $50 on a tree, you're going to spend $50 on supplements the first year, just so you know, especially with this extreme heat, man. If you saw Scott's extreme tree care video on our launch a couple Saturdays ago, that really covers it all. That'll be available in your member area. All right. There are so many factors that go into growing fruit trees in the desert. Most of them, Urban Farm Nursery has no control over after you take the tree off of the lot. That is a big reason why we do our free education. I am deeply committed to you being successful. I hate it when people's trees die. So we offer education online, in person. I don't know how much in person we're going to do this year. Pre-recorded in our member area. We'll have our pruning class in December, and we have an extensive membership area with planting instructions, watering instructions. I have my fruit tree planting manifesto there, which expanded in the past 5 years from like 3 pages to like 30 pages. That's all in our education portal. The other thing that we do is we work with reputable nurseries. So basically what we're doing is we're doing everything we can to make sure that you're successful. We've been with Dave Wilson Nursery since 1999. We've been with Sunset Citrus Nursery since 2004. When the trees arrive, we go through an extensive process to check the health and get the trees ready for you to pick up. Deciduous trees, we prune them. Citrus don't need to be pruned. So taking ownership of a tree is not just about paying for the tree. This is a living organism, and you have to be really cognizant of where it goes. I encourage you now, before it cools off, to go stand where your fruit trees are going to be planted and see if you'd want to live there. And if it's too hot, you want to make sure that you're doing things to mitigate that heat. We're going to talk a lot about that in my next 2 classes. And I already said, expect to spend as much on supplements and soil as you do for the tree. All right. All this, I love this graphic. All this because I absolutely hate it when people die. Don't I, Janet? Or people die. I hate that too. I hate it when trees die. Don't I, Janice?
You get very emotional when you hear that somebody is doing this, struggling.
Yeah. So we actually put together a guarantee. I'm going to take about 2 minutes to put together to tell you about the guarantee and how it works. Here's my offer. This is how you're going to plant your tree. 40% native soil, 60% organic matter with our planting kit. You're going to plant the tree at the correct depth. We'll teach you how to do that. You're going to apply the 6-6 rule. That's in class number 2 and class number 3 that I talk about the 6-6 rule. Basically, it's 6-foot diameter basin with at least 6 inches of woody mulch. 8 or 10 inches of woody mulch is better. You're going to get a moisture meter and use it. We sell them. You can buy them at most nurseries. They're about $7. You're going to water and fertilize per our directions. This includes foliar feeding. And I want you to document, at least document the planting process on your phone so that you know what's happening. And so that if you need to share a picture with us down the road, you can do that. And then, here's the thing. And then the moment your tree is in distress, I need you to email me. Take 2 pictures, one of the affected area and one standing straight, standing 8 feet back. Our goal is to help you have success here and not have to start over. So if we can troubleshoot it before the tree dies, all the better. That way we've saved your time, money, and energy, and so on and so on. Okay, still no success. If for some reason you follow all our directions and your tree doesn't die, what we do is we split the cost of a tree with you the next year. The reason we split the cost of a tree is because we're doing everything we can on our side to make sure that we educate you. And what I'm hoping for is partnership with you to make sure that you're doing everything you do. So when you take a healthy tree off of the lot and it doesn't make it, it's not really my fault, but it's not really your fault. So let's just split it down the middle. So that's why we do it the way that we do it. You're going to benefit from 30 years of my successes and failures, and all that stuff, and be eating incredible fruit trees from your yard inside of 3 years. The bottom line is we do everything that we can to assure you that you'll do, that you do everything you can do. I think I've said enough. We don't need this one. All right, so I have a few examples and then we'll take questions. Notice who signed this. This is a tree that didn't make it in my yard. It happens. It's a process. Take a deep breath. I promise you, I've killed more trees than you have. I've killed more plants than you have because I've been gardening for 45 years. It happens. And we're here to partner with you to get the best out of it. And this is a perfect picture. This is a shaded tree. This is a hot microclimate because of the block wall and the dirt all the way around it. And look at how this tree is thriving. This was a 6-month planted out tree after 6 months. And it's covered, it's shaded. It's got a 6-foot diameter basin with 6 inches of woody mulch. More about that in the next class. Love this one. Earlier this year, I talked to this guy named Rick, and I did some coaching with him. And this is 6 months later, actually 4 months later. He says, earlier this year, you helped me out with my dying lime tree. I watched your webcast dramatically alter the ground around the tree, bought mulch and fertilizer from you. And this is the difference 4 months makes. These are his pictures, not my pictures. One on the left was before, the one on the right is after. The thing that I would change, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is like a 10-foot diameter basin filled with woody mulch. Yay. The one thing I would change, I was shaking my finger at you, sorry. The one thing I would change is this. I discovered this, shame to say, only about 4 years ago. And I went out in my front yard. This was a picture in August. I went out in my front yard and with one of those temperature guns and I pointed at the ground. It was 140 degrees at ground level and 120 degrees down. That's enough to kill your trees. Obviously, it's not enough to kill the nut grass, but it's enough to kill your trees. Underneath the plants up top, those are sweet potatoes, which do really well here. Underneath the sweet potatoes, it was 89 degrees. So I highly suggest, and what I would do with this one, the plant on the right, is I would plant a dozen cowpea seeds in this basin and get them growing, because what cowpeas do is they're nitrogen fixers. They're on the same watering schedule as the tree, so they're drought tolerant, as is the sweet potatoes, and it shades the ground. This could be the difference between your tree dying and your tree living. One of the services that I offer is a garden consult. Janice can post the garden consult link in the note there. Sorry, the first 10 people that buy a garden consult today for Desert Gold Peach, that was last year. I should have taken that out, I apologize. But garden consults are 2 today. People can learn so much from them. They are money back guarantee. I've been doing them for 10 years. I've never given anybody their money back. Yes, Janice?
Sorry, that was just a cough.
Okay, cool. All right. So here is our order form. We don't have printed order forms this year because we're not seeing anybody in person, but if you go to store.urbanfarm.org, that's where you order your trees from. You're going to get your best and bundle pricing right now. Here's our bundle. Here's some of our bundles. And so those bundles are available now until the first weekend of November. So if you want bundle pricing and early bird pricing, you got to jump in. We also have a specialty fruit, special order fruit tree program available. If you want to experiment, we have at our disposal the entire line of fruit trees from Dave Wilson Nursery, and they grow hundreds of different varieties of fruit trees. So if you want to order one and experiment, you can do that. Yes, Janice?
No mulberries or persimmons this year.
No jujubes or persimmons.
Jujubes or persimmons on the special order program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but there's all kinds of other trees that you can experiment with. We got you covered on that if you're interested. So your next steps, take my other classes. We have, help me with this, Janice, we have everything you need to know after you buy your fruit trees.
Well, we did today's before. We got
right.
everything to know after. Mm-hmm. The extreme care.
Right, which includes planting, watering, and fertilizing.
You know what, I was just working on this like 20 minutes ago before class. Before, after care, your favorites.
Oh yes, I'm doing one of my favorite.
And what supplies we need.
Oh yes. Mm-hmm.
What supplies do I need with my fruit tree? And then we're going to have one episode of what to do for the special order program.
Special order program. So if you're interested in the special order program, you'll definitely want to get in there. But here's for sure. You definitely, Janice, can you say?
Definitely.
Want to take before and after an extreme fruit tree care. I have spent the last 20 years developing these classes. This is what you need in order to be successful with your fruit trees. And sometimes you're not successful. Sorry.
Before, after, and extreme care are absolutely essential. What supplies do I need is pretty darn important. And Greg's favorites, that's just pretty cool.
Yeah. All right. And then join us at the pop-up nursery in October to pick up your pre-ordered citrus trees and buy your planting supplies. You should pre-order planting supplies if you can. Which includes planting mix, Farmer Greg's planting mix, your tree planting kits, and mulch for your trees. We have that available. Pre-dig your planting holes. Here's the thing. I can't tell you how many times I brought trees home. The hole wasn't dug, and they never got planted. Yes, I did that. Go ahead.
And you take care of talking about how to prepare your holes in the after, what to do after you buy your trees.
Exactly. We'll go in depth. There's very specific ways that we help you figure that out. But pre-digging your holes is essential. If you can get your holes dug and dig them square this year. No, we're not going with round. We're going with square holes. And for our 15-gallon size, you want to go 2 foot by 2 foot by about a foot deep. That loosens up the soil and adds planting mix in it and so on and so on. So our citrus trees will be here the middle of October, and our deciduous trees will be here in late January and very early February. And you can't click on this page. That used to be the instant teleseminar version of this where you could actually click on the page, but with Zoom, we can't do that. So store.urbanfarm.org is where our trees are at. You can
I've got some links that I'm going to be throwing up in the chat room while you answer some questions. Are you ready?
Fantastic. Yes.
Now, I want to talk about one thing that I noticed in our conversation when you were talking right now is documenting the process. And I want to bring that really to the forefront with my face up here so you guys can see me.
Yeah, turn on your video.
Hi. Okay, so we talk about documenting the process, and that is the point where we are so confident in what we do that we know that if you document that you're doing it, you're going to prove that what you're doing works.
There you go.
We're so confident in this process.
There you go.
All right. The first one is from Hebe, I believe. She says, hi from Scottsdale. I'm hoping it could be a guy or girl. I don't know that name. If you do not cover locations in this class, would like to understand the optimal amount of sun exposure for citrus, peach, and apple. And does the tree need to be a certain distance from a 5 to 6 foot high block wall? This particular wall in question faces northeast.
It depends. It is. So here's the thing. When you have concrete, when you have dirt, when you have gravel, you have a very warm microclimate. And it is your job to make sure that you mitigate that heat as much as possible. And you do that by adding 6 to 12 inches of woody mulch in the entire space. If you're really close to a block wall, yes, pulling it 5 or 6 feet away from a block wall would be a really good idea. Optimal. So here's the thing. These trees need light in order to produce fruit. The heat is what gets them. So you have to increase the light and decrease the heat. Now, citrus, pomegranates, and figs are going to be a little bit more heat tolerant than peaches, apricots, plums, and apples, and berries and grapes and that kind of stuff. So increase the light as much as possible and do your best to mitigate the heat by planting a ground cover shade. Like we talked about, sweet potatoes or cowpeas. We, by the way, give away cowpeas in January. So when you come and get your trees, you can take a packet or two of cowpeas with you. I purposely grow them here to package and give them away during our fruit tree program.
And once you have one packet, you're good because it'll keep giving you more packets.
Oh, yeah.
One option that I did in my yard to help mitigate some of the heat around the block wall was I started putting wooden trellising up against near the wall, but I like to put it out like an inch or two away from the wall, and that helps prevent the direct heat coming off the wall. It stops the heat getting to the wall, and then it kind of creates a little barrier. So that helps too.
You know what I saw at the 19 North Community Garden, which I replicated here?
What's that?
Is, they took old barnwood at the 19 North Garden, and they put it horizontally on the wall.
Yeah.
A block wall. So now all of a sudden you're looking at barnwood and not a block wall. But secondarily, what it does is it significantly cuts down the heat. And what I did here at the Urban Farm is I disassembled old fence panels, because that wall there behind me, this is a picture, but the wall on that side of the house, we put in a block wall a couple of years ago because the neighbor wanted one. Not a fan because of the heat factor, but that's what I did with it. And first of all, it looks really cool, and it knocks down the heat tremendously. Mm-hmm. So whatever you can do, Hebe, for reducing the amount of heat that you have in the space, you're going to have to.
And how far away the tree should be from the wall depends on whether or not you want to get back there. If you have the tree right next to the wall, then you're not going to be able to get back there yourself when the tree grows to be full size. Mm-hmm. So I hope we answered all your questions. Nancy wants to know what type of grapefruit tree grows here.
Whatever you can get a hold of.
Yeah, pretty much.
Rio Red, Oro Blanco.
Ruby Red. We have that new pomelo, which is the
Pomelo.
grapefruit parent.
Yeah. And honestly, a bowling ball size. Pomelos grow bowling ball size. They're sweet. They're not tart. They're nice and sweet. Oh, let me actually touch on this. People want to know what the sweetest fruit is. I get this question all the time. What's the sweetest fruit? I can't tell you because it's highly, 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 did I say highly? Dependent upon, yeah, dependent upon the nutritional value of your soil.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why the azomite, mycorrhiza, worm castings, fertilizing, drenches, which is a foliar drench. That's why we're doing all of this. Your single most important thing that you can be doing to grow healthy food, healthy nutrient dense food, healthy plants is to grow healthy soil.
Mm-hmm.
So.
All right, a quick one here. I know you answered this one. Anita asks, to dwarf mulberry, the tree, shrub, or bush, and how big does it get?
So the dwarf black mulberry is a tree and a bush, depending on how you prune it. They grow voraciously fast. It is not the plant that I know I said this earlier, it is not the plant that's the dwarf, it is the berry that's the dwarf. I cut mine in half each year. In the spring, I cut 8 feet off of the top of my dwarf black mulberries, and they've grown that tall again out back. You'll see this in my favorite fruit tree class. The trunks on the ones that are 4 years old are that big around. A year later, I planted 2 of them to grow them out as trees. The trunks on them are about that size, and they're easily 20 feet tall.
I put one in a pot to keep it in a pot just for a little while till I could make space. And that thing was such a happy camper that it grew right down the bottom of the pot. So if you do put it in a pot, make sure you give it some airspace underneath so the roots don't get it. But it's a fast grower.
Oh, yeah.
For the dwarf mulberry.
Fast grower, makes great fruit, makes it an amazing abundance of fruit. You cannot eat it all. Oh, yeah. And it makes a great replacement for oleanders because they grow bush-like. If you're growing them out as bushes, they grow bush like that.
Nice. All right. Matt wants to know, are the citrus, our non-dwarf citrus that we sell, all using the same rootstock?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And I can find out. So given that this is a citrus grower, basically for the state, she only grows stuff on rootstocks that do really well here.
Right.
So.
Jessica wants to know if hedgerow spacing is trunk to trunk.
Yes. 4, 5, or 6 feet trunk to trunk. 4 feet's probably too close. 6 feet might be a little bit far. So right. 5 feet's perfect.
Right. Juliet says, how long can the citrus trees that I get in October stay in their pot before I plant it?
I wouldn't let them go past February, but plant them in mid-October to early November, and then don't plant them until February 15th.
Yeah, unless you're pretending to keep them in a pot, then you make sure you put them in a pot that's what, 2 times, 3 times bigger to start off.
Here's the thing about planting anything in a pot in the desert. It goes back to the heat and light thing. The tree, the what's planted in the pot needs lots of light. The heat will cook them in the pot.
Yes, yeah. I mean, just imagine these 110-degree temperatures for almost 60 days. You need to figure out a way to make sure your pot is cool.
Yeah. So shade the pot.
All right. I answered that one. Jean says, any advice for pomegranates? She's had 2 different types, but they split early and never turn sweet or red. Water and nutrients?
Yeah, it's the splitting, and the same thing happens with tomatoes here. Is if the watering is uneven, they have a tendency to do that. And then you have to check the varieties. You know, I have a pomegranate right down my street. It's a wonderful pomegranate. It is loaded this year, and they're not splitting. They got a good even watering on them, and it's nice fruit. So it's definitely possible. You need to get the watering consistently done, and here's where foliar fertilizing and fertilizing will help as well.
Yes. Yes. And, you know, we're going to talk about the watering and the fertilizing in the care class, but yeah, don't miss that class. We're going to go into that a lot more.
You know, I want to apologize here real quick. I know it's 3 classes, it's 3 hours, but I couldn't boil it down anymore and get the information across to you. So attend those classes, absolutely, for sure.
Yeah. Kiyomi says she has a jujube. Don't plant it. It's a beautiful tree, but it takes over your yard. So yeah, if you do have a jujube, you're gonna want to.
They can absolutely. Yes, they can absolutely. I do. There is a question here.
I got it.
Petras.
About the avocado tree. Well, since you asked for it, Petra wants to know about avocado trees and what do you recommend?
So I know of a couple of avocado trees here that are ancient and produce fruit, but most every single one of them, and a few years ago, we brought in 100 of them as an experiment, told people it was an experiment. And as far as I know, none of them made it. They're very hard to grow in the desert. Not that it's not possible. What we do at the Urban Farm is we cater to do it this way. It's not that much work and you're going to get fruit. And, you know, things like date palms, completely doable here. They just take a lot more work. Blueberries, which we have on our list. Some people have great luck with blueberries. Other people don't. I killed my blueberries, but I don't like to dote over things. If you want to dote over something, blueberries, they can do well here. You just have to give them a lot of attention. So that being said, the blueberries this year are the only thing on our list that's experimental. And I will continue to call them experimental because they take so much work. But
one of the important things about avocados that I learned when we first bringing them in is that the new roots of an avocado are very fragile. And because they're so fragile, they can be easily damaged in transport, in moving. And that's just really adds to the difficulty of growing it as you're repotting it, and it's so sensitive to the temperature. And a lot of people overwater their avocados. So if you have one, don't overwater it. Nancy wants to know about water regarding, does vinegar and water help tree roots take up water?
Not heard that before.
I've not, but I think with the foliar feeding and the drench feeding, that would be sufficient.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jessica wanted to know about the Texas root dip, when that might be available.
Well, I'm working on it right now. I don't know if it's a root dip. I don't know exactly what it is. I've actually reached out to Arbico down in Tucson. This is what they specialize in, ladybugs and, you know, beneficial insects and all that stuff. So I've got to call into them to see
what they can offer for us.
Yeah, what they can offer for us. The mycorrhiza it helps, but I think we need more. And so I'm looking into it literally this week.
Oh, good. Adam asks if there are any trees on our list for which the 5 to 6 foot spacing is not appropriate, assuming we do correct pruning.
In a hedge? I'm assuming he's talking a hedge. No? Well, so here's the thing, Adam. If you want a hedge, then 5 to 6 feet is a perfect distance. I'd say 5 feet is a perfect distance, trunk to trunk. If you want to be able to walk between them, then you have to go more like 8 or 10 feet.
Yeah.
And that's assuming that you're keeping the trees
manageable
in size. Yes.
Right. Kristen lives on an old farmland that's an irrigated lot in Chandler and wants to plant
Nice.
on the north side of the lot. What would be best to plant?
I'd have to see the space and how much shade is over there. But if it's on flood irrigation, all the stuff that we sell loves flood irrigation. So
Yeah. And I think when you're talking about the north side, and Greg just mentioned the shade, how much of that north side is going to be shaded?
right.
That's it. Exactly. That is our questions tonight. So
All right.
everybody, our after class on Thursday is actually going to be in webinar format. So we will send out a link that'll be, there will be a Q&A section. It'll be a little bit more like our class that we had on the kickoff.
Cool.
And
go ahead.
no, you first.
Thank you. So this Friday and Saturday, we're packaging all of our seeds for the Great American Seed Up. Thank you, Elvira. She said that was fantastic. Thank you, Greg and Janice.
Nice.
We're packaging all of our seeds for the Seed Up in a box for our Great American Seed Up this Friday and Saturday. So if you want to jump in and get your seeds early from Seed Up in a box, go to greatamericanseedup.org. I see Janice probably typing that into the chat room. Thank you, Miss Janice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's that.
Kristen asks, how much is a consultation?
$95.
$95. Oh, and we did have a lady who wants to see a picture of your new wood, and that happens in your urban farm tour, right? Your new wood fence?
It does. Let me see. So if she comes to class on Thursday, let me see about taking a picture of that. And
cool.
Maybe I'll make it that.
Oh, that'll be good.
Yeah.
I'll take a picture of my trellis so people can see the trellis too.
Perfect. Awesome. So the Great American Seed Up, seed up in a box is this Saturday. So get your orders in for that. We just today, this is how things happen on our team. We just today scheduled a 4-hour seed
kickoff.
Education. What'd you call it?
A kickoff.
Kickoff education extravaganza online, just like we did the fruit tree program a week ago Saturday, on Saturday, October 10th.
I am so excited about the lineup of classes. I mean, we're just, once again, tons of stuff packed into as much as possible. Yeah. I'm so excited. That class list just got longer and longer and longer and longer. So
right. Yeah. So we're doing that. That'll be
the 10th of October.
October 10th. Yep.
Right. Give me some time to get it all set up so you can start signing up for it.
Elvira says, Greg, I have an empty garden, just shrubs and no more grass. Oh, thank God. And I would like to start a veggie raised bed. Do you consult with that? Yep, I do. Absolutely.
That would be the phone consult. Yeah.
Yep, that'll be a phone consult.
It's 6:08. We did it with just a little bit over.
Nice. And I still got light to get the chickens in.
Yay. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Store.urbanfarm.org is where you can find our list of available fruit trees. As things start running out, they'll disappear off of there. You're definitely going to want to understand the foliar process that we've got going. That's going to help a lot. And yeah, thanks for playing. We'll keep doing classes.
And if you need anything, you can always email me if you're having a question on the cart, and I will work with that.
Yeah, fruittree@urbanfarm.org.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you on Thursday night.
Thank you.
Oh, and our seed chats tomorrow night.
Our seed chats tomorrow night.
Our seed chats tomorrow night. So we'll be doing that too.
Wow.
I just keep doing it, man.
You are now, aren't you?
There you go. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.